Oh, yeah. Well, today we're going to switch it up just a little bit just because John isn't going to be on the air. And I've been thinking about doing this segment for quite some time. Normally, I'm going to do it on Sunday, so I'm going to do War Story Sundays. And what this comes down to is I'm going to tell you some of the fucking stories that I had happen to me in combat. It's not a subject that most people are probably willing to talk about. Fuck it. I might as well. I've been there. It's probably not a topic that most people will enjoy. Yeah, who knows? Maybe some people will. Everything that I tell you is 100% factual. I'm not going to bullshit anything. I'm not going to make any of this stuff up. It's going to include real people, real things that actually happened. And this is my life. So I figure I might as well tell it. So let's get into it. I'm going to tell you the original story, the originating piece that got me into all of this. So let me first, what's up, guys? How you doing? Let me first start off and tell you, I was destined to become a United States Marine. I didn't even know it. And really what it came down to was, everything's a series of events that culminate and turn your life around into a means of building you into the person that either you need to be or you want to be. Yeah. So I'm rocking the Punisher shirt today. And I got this fresh cut, so I was like, you know what? John's not going to be on. I'm going to keep it going. I got this little slick back going on. My barber, for some reason, likes to slick my hair back whenever he cuts it fresh. I was like, I'm in a fucking war-fighting mood today. I got my knife here right at my table. I don't know why. I'm just like sitting here. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's rock and roll. Let's go. So I'll tell you guys how this all started off with me becoming a United States Marine. And then how it actually ended up getting me into war. So when I was 16 years old, I remember, my dad wasn't much of a father. My dad's a very masculine guy, but he's kind of a cunt. And not very good at teaching lessons. He's not he didn't really teach well, right? Hey, you bet. No problem. I got thanked for my service. You're welcome. I appreciate people who support. My father didn't teach me much. He wasn't a very good masculine role model. And there was a part of me that thought that going to war and joining the military was what was going to give me the masculine mentorship. But even before then, my dad didn't do too much in my life for me. But I remember one day, this was a big deal. My dad was a big Yankees fan. My family came into Ellis Island in 1921 and lived in New York. The Italian side of my family lived in New York City for quite some time and then moved to Connecticut. And the area of Connecticut that my family's from is kind of crazy because we're like on the Great Divide, right? We're about halfway between New York City, halfway between Boston. So it's like red and blue, like Patriots, Red Sox, Giants, Yankees, right? So it's like a big merger there. And this year, 2001, it was September 9th, 2001, my dad decided to take it was just myself and my good friend at the time to go to the last Yankees-Red Sox game in the old Yankee Stadium on September 9th, 2001. And we went and watched the Yankees play the Red Sox. The Yankees ended up winning. It was crazy. It was big to my dad because he got to go and see that last Yankees-Red Sox game at the old Yankee Stadium. We got to go and look around, kind of explore the stadium before that. And the big thing was this, like, as we were driving out, I think I've been to the city maybe like once or twice before that, but never paid too much attention. But I remember as we were driving out the city that day in the bus, I got a reflection. It was just the perfect lighting of the Twin Towers as we were leaving. Like, I remember we were probably like 2 or 3 blocks away, maybe a little bit further, and just like the perfect reflection of the Twin Towers. And I just turned and I looked down the street at the towers, and I was just in complete and utter fucking amazement. I was like, damn, those things are just, like, they're magnanimous, right? It was crazy. I remember staring at them all the way out of the city. And, 2 days later, I'm in my Spanish class as a junior. And I remember my Spanish teacher wheeling in the cart. You know those carts that they used to have, like, safety strapped down the TV and the VCR. My Spanish teacher wheeled in that cart and turned on the TV and just went and sat in the back of the classroom and didn't say a thing. No one knew what was going on, right? It was 8:30 in the morning, 8:50 in the morning, something along those lines. And something weird was just going on, and the teacher didn't say anything. And, the TV's on, and all of a sudden we see Tower 2, I believe, which was the first tower to get struck, is on fire. And the newscasters are telling us at the time, that it was a plane accident. And we're like, what the hell, so what kind of deal. And all of a sudden we see Tower 1 get hit by the second plane, and we realize in that moment that it's a terrorist attack. Now, again, the crazy part about where I live, where I was born and raised, we're halfway between Boston and New York City. Now, if most of you guys don't remember, Boston is where most of the flights came out of that day. So I live in this small country town, but people are freaking out, right? People are going crazy. They're like, what do? We need to get these kids out of here. We don't know what's going on. There's these anthrax attacks, and there's all these other bomb warnings. I don't know if everybody remembers any of that stuff. And then all of a sudden we watch the towers fall like an hour later, and we're like, holy fuck, like shit just got real. And I was like, just like everybody else, like Team America at that point in time, like crazy, just everyone was bound together. But I remember, and this is part of like my awakening too, my spiritual awakening in a way. I was supposed to go to work that day. So first off, they let everybody out of class or let everybody out of school around noon that day and told everyone to go right home. And I was supposed to go to work at like 2:30 that day. I was stocking shelves at my local grocery store, and they closed the grocery store down and they told everyone to go home. Like, no one's going to work. Everyone needs to just go home. So I'm sitting there, and I remember watching Tower 7 fall at 5:37 that night, and I was just like, that looked like a controlled demolition. I was like, there's no way. Like, it doesn't make sense. 2 planes, 3 towers. 3 towers fell. And that began, like, my skepticism. But in a way, too, it also still forced me in a way to choose my destiny. Now, what ended up happening was, long story short with me, I had no clue what I wanted to do after I got out of high school, right? I was a little bit of a husky kid. I was a hockey player, so I wasn't very, I didn't look like your athletic build. We used to call that husky, right? Where you're like right on that borderline between chubby and fit, right? And I remember at that time, I was like, man, I'm going to go become a chef. I loved cooking, but my parents fucking destroyed that because they made me cook dinner every single night. So I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do that, right? And I was scared of becoming fat, so I didn't want to spend 12 hours a day in a kitchen. So then the next best option was to go and become a cop. But at the same time, I was also like illegally street racing at the time, and I fucking hated the cops. So I was like, fuck, I don't want to become a cop. So I was like, man, I don't know what to do, right? And I kind of had the epiphany too. I was like, why am I going to go to school? Why am I going to go to college and waste all this money and money that I don't have, because I came from like lower middle class. Yeah, I'd probably say like lower middle class, because we were struggling to pay the bills kind of deal. And I was like, my dad had told me my entire life, he's like, you're out of the house at 18. You're out of the house at 18. You're out of the house at 18. And there was never ever any conversation, any conversation about, hey, where are you going to go to college, Corey? Like, my parents never asked me that question. And there was never a conversation of like, oh, if you want to go to this college, if you want to go to this school, we're here to help you out. We'll take out loans and we'll do that. There was never any of this stuff. So I was like on my fucking own kind of thing, right? And I'm sitting here either way. Like, so I'm on my own. I'm having to make my own decisions financially at this point in time. And I'm like, man, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, I'm going to go $80,000 into debt. And here I am, like, I'm 18 years old now. I'm partying. All I want to do is fuck bitches. I want to fight. And I want to just get drunk and hang out with the dudes and illegally street race and build my cars, right? And I was like, fuck. Like, if I go to school, if I take out these loans, I'm going to fuck my life up. I know it. I'm going to get C's. I'll probably get into all these fights. You know, I had friends that were getting into fights too, and they were going to jail and all this other shit. And I was like, damn, I'm going to become a fucking townie, you know? And I was like, dude, this is going to be terrible. So I was at a party, and this is literally like, this is probably like a month before I graduate high school or something like that. And I'm at a party, and I live in this little shit kicker town, guys, to be honest with you, right? And we're just drinking fucking beer, probably Keystone Light around a fire. That's the party, you know? And I remember someone coming up to me, and they're like, hey, did you hear that Jeff Cormier's back in town? I'm like, what? Like, Jeff Cormier graduated 2 years before me. I wasn't really friends with him. But I'm like, why the fuck would I care, you know? And they're like, he just graduated Marine Corps boot camp. You should see this dude. He's like fucking locked and cocked and ready to rock. And then they start saying all these fucking stupid made up stories about Marines. They're like, I hear when you become a Marine, you have to like register yourself as a lethal weapon. And I was like, oh my God, that's fucking epic, right? Like, just the fact that you could be trained. Just the fact that you could be trained to be like that is fucking awesome. But, you know, what really won me over was the fact that, like, how people were talking about Marines at the time. And I was like, you know, I still don't want to do that. That's like giving my life away kind of deal. And, you know, I sat on that thought for a little while. And I remember I went and checked out all the other branches before I checked out the Marine Corps. I went and I saw an Air Force recruiter. I saw an Army recruiter. Actually, I didn't even go and look. Like, the Army, Navy, and Air Force were all in one office. So I went there one day, and I was like, fuck it. Let's do it. And I went, and I met the Army guy. No, sorry. I met the Air Force guy first. And the Air Force guy was like a used car salesman with shiny white teeth. And he was in his, like, gay little light blue whatever uniform. And he's like, yeah, you know, all the other branches are going to make you like work out and do all sorts of stuff. The Air Force, it's like college. Like, you live in dorms, and like, if you don't really want to work out, you can always rollerblade and you could do all this other stuff. And I was like, the fuck is this shit? Like, get out of here. I don't want this crap. So I was like, all right, thank you. And then I went and I saw the Army next. And the Army recruiter was literally this like 5'2" 110-pound dude still wearing his BCGs. And if you guys don't know what BCGs are, we call them birth control goggles. Let me Google them. Birth control goggles. And let's see if I can pull them up here. Yeah, fuck. They're the most awful looking. Yeah, this is the best. All right, let's switch screens. And he's still wearing BCGs, and he's just like this goober with a lisp. And he's like, yeah, if you join the Army, we're going to pay for all your uniforms. And that's, you know, that was his selling point to me was, you know, if you join the Army, we're going to pay for your uniforms. There wasn't anything else. He was just like, we're going to pay for your uniforms. I was like, okay. And then I leave there and I look at the Navy office down the way, and I was just like, fuck that. I'm not doing the Navy. Like, just no. Like, no, I don't want to fucking do the Navy. So I left there that day, like, you know, obviously questioning and all this other stuff. I was like, fucking all right. I was like, let's go check out the Marines. So I went and I checked out the Marine Corps recruiting office closest to my house, and yeah, right, free pickle suits. I go and I walk in, and I think it's like 9:30, 10 in the morning or something like that on like a Saturday or something like that. And I walk in the Marine Corps recruiter's office, and there's this fucking buff-ass, bald-headed dude like busting out of his khaki shirt. He's sweating, right? He just busted out some pull-ups. The office is sick. It's his own fucking office. And I sit down, and he's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "The fuck this dude just say to me?" You know what I mean? Like, "What do you want?" Like, I'm here to check this shit out. Like, what do you have to offer me, kind of thing. And, you know, the typical story and the typical fashion is like, I don't remember if he said this exactly, but normally what recruiters will say is like, it's not what the Marine Corps has to offer you. It's like what you have to offer the Marine Corps, right? We don't need you. You need us. So that was kind of the disposition he had. He didn't say that directly to me, but he, you know, he just totally roped me in with just how fucking professional he was. And, you know, the fact that he was in shape and he took, I guess, care of himself, right? He upheld certain standards and qualities, and I was like, damn. And then he's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." So he pulls out, he does this little like quick thing, right? And he like reaches down into his drawer, and he pulls something out of his drawer. And mind you, it's like 9:30 in the morning, and he pulls out this Crown Royal bag, right? That velvet fucking purple bag. And I was like, damn, what's up with this dude, right? And he dumps out these tiles on the desk, and on the tiles, each one of the tiles says something like, you know, call to duty, like call to service, serve your country, travel the world, learn a new trade, create your own financial, I guess, upbringing or whatever, right? Your own financial value, exotic women, right? And I was just like, I want all those, dude. And he just like looks at me, and he like doesn't even break contact, and he just takes the tiles, puts it back in the bag, and he's like, "Then become a United States Marine." And I was like, whoa, like way too soon, you know what I mean? He's like, "Well, I mean, you gotta either shit or get off the pot," kind of deal. So then he goes and he shows me some videos and all this other stuff, you know, what it takes to become a Marine and all that good shit. And I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. I'm like, this is what I need, right? Like, your soul just kind of tells you, like, that's aligned with what I'm trying to do. So I end up joining the Marine Corps. I go home that day, and I tell my parents, and I said, you know, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And they're like, "Are you sure that's what you want?" And, you know, my parents didn't really give a shit. Like, they probably pretended that they did, but they didn't really give a fuck. And the scary part about this is you got to understand, everybody, like, this is June, July 2003. We are literally invading Iraq. We're invading Iraq at the moment. So you could see my trepidation with wanting to join the Marine Corps at the time is like, I'm literally fucking going to war. I'm going to go to war. Now, the next step in joining the military is you got to go through a series of tests and all this other stuff, and they got to check your asshole. No lie. They got to literally check your asshole. They have you bend over and spread your cheeks and do all this other crazy shit. I don't know why. No, I do know why. It's like hernia stuff, but you got to do your ASVAB test, and then they place you, and I scored very high on my ASVAB test. And this is kind of where the story's going of, you know, my taste of war. So I end up joining the Marine Corps. I do very well. I end up getting lumped into an aviation operations category for my MOS, which is just it's military occupational specialty. So that's your job. I could there's like 4 or 5 different types of jobs in there. There's air traffic controller, crash fire rescue, which is just the firefighters on the airfield, crew chief, and weather observer, right? So you observe the weather. I looked at my recruiter. I was like, dude, you know, like, what's up with this? I want to either be like air traffic control. What I really wanted to do, what I really, really wanted to do was I wanted to actually be a door gunner out of a Huey. That's one of the biggest reasons why I also wanted to join the Marine Corps. You know, like the whole fucking, what movie is it? How am I drawing a blank on this? Because I watched it. Was it Stanley Kubrick? Joker? Come on, what the hell? I'm drawing a blank on this movie. I can't believe it. People be ashamed of me. It's like the most famous Full Metal Jacket. There we go. Fuck, holy crap. You know, Full Metal Jacket of flying in a Huey shooting a machine gun. I was like, that would be fucking epic, right? My recruiter's like, dude, you're going to get that. Don't worry about it. There's none of those other MOSs are going to be open. Don't worry about it. They're not even open. You're going to get this one. Don't worry about it. I was like, all right, cool. He's like, you're going to get a $4,000 sign-on bonus and all this other shit. I was like, awesome. So I joined up, go through boot camp, fucking kick ass in boot camp. I loved boot camp. Don't get me, like, most people be like, oh my God, boot camp. But boot camp was awesome. It was like one of the most fun things that I've ever done in my life. It sucked. Don't get me wrong. There were definitely times that it was fucking terrible, but boot camp overall was like the most, dude, these drill instructors must be trained in like comedy before they fucking become drill instructors. Cause like they would say the funniest shit in the world, like ruthless shit. Like one kid, this kid Harlow, goddamn, I hope that kid's doing all right, but Harlow was almost identical to that fucking army recruiter that I was telling you about, like 5'2", 5'3", with fucking BCGs and just whatever. Harlow looked like what you would imagine, like, I'm just gonna be honest. Harlow looked like he had fucking fetal alcohol syndrome. Like, he was just frail and weak and just fucking, like, there was not, like, he wasn't cooking with a fucking full pan of grease, if you know what I'm saying. Crazy. And I remember my drill instructors would fucking hammer him sometimes just because he was such an easy target. And I remember them just saying some of the craziest shit. Like, they would talk about his mom being a fucking alcoholic while he was in the womb, and how she'd probably fuck all these different dudes and he doesn't know which dad is his, and all this other stuff, and that he was born behind a dumpster. Oh, it was so good. That's the first time I ever heard, like, Harlow, you should have been a blowjob. The thing is, like, anytime the drill instructor say something to you, you have to respond with, like, aye, sir, yes, sir, or no, sir. So Harlow's over here fucking standing on line. And these fucking drill instructors are just laying into him, saying the worst shit possible. It's so good. And Harlow's just sitting there, fucking raggedy little Harlow, little frail Harlow. And they're like, Harlow, your mom was an alcoholic, wasn't she? And Harlow's just like, aye, sir. Harlow was his last name, because we only knew each other by last names. Like, in the military, especially in the Marine Corps, you only know each other by last names, especially in boot camp. So that was, I think his name's Brian Harlow. I don't remember. Fucking awesome. Like, we ended up by the end of boot camp, and this is what the drill instructors do, though. And this is what most people, mothers of America might listen to this fucking podcast and be like, oh, that's abusive and that's terrible. But you know what ended up happening? Like, Harlow's ass got fucking worked into a man while he was at boot camp. And we ended up rallying behind Harlow, like, as a unit. And we ended up uplifting him. Like, he became our teammate. Like, he became one of us. So we ended up protecting Harlow, and the drill instructors were like our enemies, right? That's the game that they play. They try to make you end up hating them so much that you, as a team, bond. And that's the beauty of the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps does a phenomenal job of breaking you down, what we like to say, shotgun style. Breaking you down shotgun style and making you fall in love with the guys to the right and left of you so that you'd be willing to sacrifice yourself. So, like, people would do shit like, people would stand in front of drill instructors, especially drill instructors from other platoons. We would stand in front of other drill instructors if they were trying to get in, like, they were trying to steal our guide, right? Like our pike or whatever. We would fucking, like, and that's a sin. Like, you can't do that shit. Like, drill instructors will lay you the fuck out and, like, quarter deck your ass so hard. And what I mean by that is they'll literally, like, fucking toss you. And what they do, like, their punishment is they would just PT you. So physical training. Like, they would send you to the quarter deck, like, at any given time, and you would have to do fucking just insurmountable amounts. Like, you have no clue how much exercise they're going to make you do, right? They would just fucking literally fuck with your brain. You would do all sorts of stupid shit. So we got to the point where we became protective of Harlow because he was our weakest link, and we wanted Harlow to survive. So when other drill instructors or whoever, even our drill instructors, whenever they'd start to fucking get on Harlow, other people would do shit to take the attention off of them, right? But even then, dude, like some of the shit that they still said and did was so fucking funny. It was epic. It was such a insane time. Like just thinking about it brings me back. It's, man, I think most guys, believe it or not, I think most men need something like that. They need a no-kidding boot camp like that, where they're broken down and they're around a bunch of men and they're kind of able to kind of create like a bond like that with one another. It's one of the biggest issues that we're facing in society today is we don't know who to trust, and you can't have a society like this when you can't trust people. Anyway, that's a different topic. So I end up getting out of boot camp, and knowing that I'm not in the infantry, you go to Marine combat training. So I'm an East Coaster. I went to Parris Island. So after I finish boot camp, I get 10 days of leave. I get to go home for 10 days. And then you go to MCT. So that was in Jacksonville, Florida, I believe, at Camp Lejeune. People say Lejeune, whatever. Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So I went there, and it wasn't until after I finished MCT, once I finished that month-long evolution of combat training, that I find out what my MOS was. I was sitting there, and they were calling off your MOS and telling you what bus to get on to go to the airport or whatever so they could send you there. And I remember sitting there, and they called off my MOS number. And I was the only one that they called off. And they yelled out, Capella, 6821. And I was like, the fuck is that, dude? And I actually went up and I was like, sir, what the hell is that kind of deal, right? And they're like, METOC. I was like, what, METOC? They're like, weather observer. And I was like, no fucking way, right? Here I am, I'm a private. I'm like literally pond scum. And I'm like, no, like have this guttural reaction. I'm like, that's not what I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be a crew chief or ATC, like not supposed to be weather. They're like, son, like these are orders, right? I was like, no way, right? And this first sergeant comes up to me, this crusty old fucking first sergeant walks up to me. He goes, son, you just learned your first lesson in the Marine Corps. And I was like, what is that, first sergeant? He's like, you do what the fuck you're told. Right? He's like, get the fuck on that bus right now. And I was like, good to go. Right? So I hopped on the bus, ended up going to Biloxi, Mississippi to be trained up as a weather observer. And I wasn't happy. I was really pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to be a weather observer. I wanted to be more. I wanted more than that. But long story short, I ended up going through weather observer school. From there, I ended up getting stationed over in Okinawa, Japan. From there, I keep trying to get out of the MOS because I don't want to be a weather observer. I want to do actual like Marine stuff, but I couldn't. I applied for Marine security guard, which meant I got to get trained up and do some awesome stuff, go and work at all the embassies and get to work with like the State Department and all that shit. And I was like, hell yeah, I got accepted for that, which means I was getting out of my MOS. And the thing about the weather MOS was, that everyone was trying to get out of it because they didn't want to be in that MOS, right? And we have these people that are in charge of those MOSs, of making sure that they're filled, right? They're called monitors. They monitor the career field to make sure it's manned and staffed to its fullest degree. And the monitor of weather was a fucking Nazi, right? Like, he had to be, right? Because there's so many people trying to get out of it that if he let even one person out, he'd have to let everybody else out, and there wouldn't have been any other there wouldn't have been anybody in the MOS, so he had to take care of it. So I get it. But what happened was I was accepted and approved by MSG. The monitor of MSG let me in to that field. But my monitor walked over to his office over in Quantico and was like, bro, if you let him out of weather, I'm going to have to let all these other people out. So they end up canceling my orders. And that was like a huge slap in the face, right? So at the time, I'm in Okinawa, Japan. I'm approaching my 2-year mark, and my master sergeant at the time, this super crusty dude, his name's Matt Andrews. Like, dude drinks like a fucking fish, lives in Thailand part-time, just crazy maniac, does Muay Thai. Like, this dude, one time he took me to this fighting dojo. And he fucking, like, dude's like 6'7". You should see he could literally palm your face and pick you up. Like, this dude was a monster. Looks like fucking Frankenstein's brother. And this dude kicked me. I swear to God, he kicked me so hard. Like, my head stayed in one position and my body shifted over like 2 body positions. It was insane. I've never been kicked so hard in my life. This dude was a maniac, and I loved him. He fucking loved me too because I was a maniac as well. Here I am. I'm a Lance Corporal, and I'm trying to get out of the MOS kind of thing, right? Go MSG. And my Master Sergeant fucking calls up the monitor, another Master Sergeant in Quantico. And, like, he has me in his office on speakerphone. He's talking to this dude in Virginia from Okinawa. He's like, listen here, you fucking motherfucker, right? He's like, I remember when you were picking boogers as my little fucking Lance Corporal. He's like, you are nothing without me, and I'm the one that fucking made you. He's like, I got this Marine right here who's trying to do this shit and better his career, and you go around and you fucking undercut him because you're a fucking big man now. He's like, you better call me back in 15 fucking minutes, giving this kid some kind of some orders to better his career. And you should have listened to this guy on the other end. He was fucking scared out of his mind. He's like, good to go. And just hangs up the phone. Calls back 15 minutes later. And I end up getting orders cut back to Biloxi, Mississippi to go to a secondary school to become a meteorological forecaster, a weather forecaster. Still not what I wanted. But you'll hear the story of how this all fucking winds up because it's fucking crazy. So I end up going to Biloxi, Mississippi. Now, the crazy part about Biloxi, Mississippi is I was in Biloxi, Mississippi in 2004, and then I went back there in 2006. And as a weather observer, what was crazy was we were watching Biloxi, Mississippi, because that's where we go to school. And during that time frame, I believe it was early 2006, we were watching Hurricane Katrina fucking bear down on that location, right? So Hurricane Katrina devastated 2 places. Like, the 2 main places that it devastated was New Orleans, and then the second was Biloxi, Mississippi. So here I am. I was in Biloxi, Mississippi pre-Katrina, and then literally right after Katrina happened. It was wild, right? I went back there, and it wasn't even the same. This place was practically fucking leveled. It was wild, right? So I'm living at this time now in these little barracks on my own as a corporal. I got promoted to corporal during this time because now I have a new MOS and all this other stuff. This is literally, I'm like 2.5 years in the Marine Corps. I'm promoted to corporal. I'm fucking jacked as a motherfucker too. I was like at my heaviest, well, up to that point in time, I was like 245 pounds of just fucking pure mass, fucking crushing it when I was in Okinawa, just lifting like crazy. Get back and I pick up corporal and I was like, damn, you know what? Now I want to start getting in shape because I want to go to Iraq. I was like, I need to go to Iraq. I need to go to Iraq, plain and simple. So I started running and I started getting in, like, now that I had the muscle mass, I started conditioning. And I got in fucking sick shape, right? So right when I get out of the school that was literally 10 months long, like every single day except for the weekends, I literally got an associate's degree. Or, well, actually, it's all upper level stuff in physics and dynamics and stuff like that. I became a no-kidding meteorologist. As soon as I finished that, they're like, where do you want to go? What unit do you want to go to? And I literally looked at them and I said, get me to the unit that is going to get me to Iraq the fastest. And they hopped on the phone, and literally within minutes, they're like, all right, you're going to report to 29 Palms. When you get to 29 Palms, you're literally going to be there for a couple months, and then you'll be in Iraq. And I was like, fucking good, sold. Let's go. Let's do this. So I finish up at Biloxi, end up going to 29 Palms. And the second I get to 29 Palms, I don't know if you guys know or heard or have heard of 29 Palms, but it is literally meth central. It is like literally if you wanted to film Breaking Bad, like that's what Breaking Bad based their whole thing off of. Like, you're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing but fucking. There's nothing but these meth heads, and then there's this base. Okay, biggest base in the Marine Corps. Huge training facility. Lots of bombs and all that other good stuff. But there's nothing to do there. And the second I got there, my mind just kind of switched. I was like, I'm going to Iraq. Like, things are kinetic right now. Like, 2007, end of 2007, things are still popping off. Like, I'm going to a fucking war zone. I need to get myself, even though I'm a weather dude, right? Gay as fuck. Even though I'm a weather dude, I'm still like, you know what? I need to get myself prepared. I need to get myself, like, I need to make sure going to the front lines that I am in the best possible shape and got my mind right for this. So I literally start running the mountains out in 29 Palms, which are like insane, right? Like, there's some places where they call like like there's like sand that is so fine that you can't even like step in it. So I start running in that. It's like finer than beach sand, and then you got to run up these mountains and all this other shit. And that's actually like, this is my first time ever encountering mountains in my entire life. And I just fell in love with mountains. Like, I was just like, every time that I got off work or whatever, I would just go out, I'd work out, and I'd go run the mountains, or I'd run the mountains in the morning or whatever. And it got me in gnarly shape. And my mindset was just like, I've got to fucking like tackle. You just got to tackle this, man. You just got to get your mindset right? So long story short, we get ready in 29 Palms to deploy. And I end up, I think it was probably like 6 months later, I end up getting promoted to sergeant. I think I got promoted to sergeant like right in the beginning of like 2008. And I was just like through the roof, right? I was like, fuck yeah. I'm like 23 or 24 years old. I'm a sergeant. I think I was like 23. I'm a sergeant. I'm making good money. I'm about to go and deploy. I'm like, hell yeah, this is exactly like where I want to be. I'm in the best shape of my life at that time, so I thought, right? And I deploy to Iraq. And we deployed to Iraq like right at the end of March. Yeah, it was like March 31st, 2008, flying to Iraq. And the crazy thing is, like, the second I landed in Iraq is the second, like, almost every significant action seemed to, like, drop off, right? Not to say that the war ended there, but literally March 2008 to April 2008, you will see a steep decline in what we call significant actions, like bombings and all this other stuff. We pretty much had eradicated the majority of the fighters, right? So here I am, and I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm on TQ. It's Al-Taqaddum. It's a big air base near Lake Tartar in Iraq. It's just outside of Ramadi. And I am literally on an airfield. That's where my workstation is. And I'm in like this bunker, right? I'm in this old building covered in like sandbags and all this other stuff. Now, you know, the thing is, where we're at now at this point in time, there's still a lot of potential for things to happen. Like, we have third-party nationals from all these other different countries, and there could be people sneaking on the base, and rockets and mortars. Like, mortar fire was still somewhat common, but not nearly as common as it was before. Everything pretty much seemed to drop off, like I said, when I got there. So it makes sense for it to happen, but I was just like, fuck. So here I am, like a month in. I'm forecasting all the weather for my AO, for all the birds, all the aviation that's flying there. Obviously, weather's huge, all the ground, all that other stuff. Weather's a huge, huge necessity whenever you're fighting in the desert, because, you know, with the desert, you don't ever know what's going to happen. A burst of wind could cause a blackout. And what I mean by a blackout is a burst of wind could lift up all this dust, and your visibility goes by the wayside. And when you have helicopters and stuff like that too, you need to be able to avoid those dust storms and all this stuff. So it's important, but it's one of those things too, like weather is a thankless job. You can predict the weather 99% of the time correctly, but the one time you get it wrong, like, everyone's going to be up your ass. And it's not like people don't come up to you when you fucking predict the weather right, and they're like, dude, fucking A+, right? Like, great job. It's like the only time you hear any feedback about anything is when you fuck up. So very thankless job. You do a lot of work for fucking almost no reward. And here I am, 23 years old, And I pretty much already broke through the glass ceiling of that job, right? A month in, here I am. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be the pinnacle of me doing this. Like, there's no way I could do 17 more years of this. Like, as a sergeant, I'm pretty much doing the highlight of the job now. Now, what ended up happening was this, and this is something you have to understand about the weather forecaster, though. Weather forecaster is in the loop of everything, right? Because everyone is trying to plan their operations now based off of weather, whether it be tank movements, whether it be missile launches, whether it be aviation, whether it be convoys and all this other stuff, like people going out. Everyone calls the weather forecaster to get weather updates in order for them to have their plans and have their plans get approved, right? So there's still a lot going on. Like, I get a lot of phone calls. I am up to date on everything. I kind of have to know everything that's going on, which means I have to be in communication with everybody else. Little did most people know. So I have access to, let's just say, information, right? I have 2 different types of computers, and the crazy part is anytime there's a report of a significant action or significant event, I'm one of the first few people to find out and know. Why? Because people have to immediately try to draw up plans in order to go and do these things, right? And they need the weather for that. So I'm abreast of all the stuff that's going on so that I can have these weather reports ready for these people that are going to call me up in the higher planning levels, right? Especially pilots. Well, the thing about being on the airfield and where I'm at too, right? I'm right underneath the air traffic control tower, and right outside of my door is the CASEVAC birds. So the CASEVAC birds are Hueys that are converted over to medical, like a quick reaction force for medical, right? Medics, what we call corpsmen in the Marine Corps. And I was, like I said, I was about a month in at this point in time, and I get a mist report that comes right across my computer screen. And a mist report is it's a report that we use to report when someone's been injured. And I'm like, oh shit, this isn't good, right? So I quickly look at the mist report. I look at the location. I start looking at my models. It's in Ramadi. It's right outside of my base, so I kind of have a feel for what's going on already at this point in time. I pull up my METARs, all this other stuff, make sure everything's good. I get a phone call rapidly. I hear the fucking bird outside gassing up and gearing up, and the pilots are like, hey, this is bad. Like, we got to get going. What's the status? Do we have anything to worry about, right? Because usually what we're worrying about is like thunderstorm cells that are collapsing in the close by or anything like that that'll cause like these large downbursts and all this other stuff. I was like, no, go, right? This is like the first major significant action that occurred. And here I am, like I said, I'm 23 years old. I'm a sergeant. I'm behind like this bunker. I'm doing this kind of safe job. And we have our first significant action where I know that helicopter is going out to go and help save the life of an injured Marine. And once the bird's up in the air and my job is pretty much done, I go back and I look at the 9 line and the MIS report and the report of what happened. And I read this very detailed and thorough report. And just to kind of give you guys an idea, this is literally April 22nd, 2008. So this is like it's probably like 25 days that I'm in country at this point in time. And I start reading the report, and I am just fucking blown away the second I read it. I'm reading this report, and the report reads like a fucking citation, and it highlights who the individuals are. So what had happened, I'll actually read or tell you guys what happened instead of what came across my screen. Just outside of my base, TQ, was Ramadi, right? And I don't know if you guys know, Ramadi was a big time Al-Qaeda stronghold that we ended up pacifying for some time, but we didn't completely pacify. Now, during this time frame in 2008, the biggest focus was on restabilizing the area, restabilizing the location. And we did that by, bringing in infrastructure and trying to kind of model a lot of their society based off of how we are able to keep order in ours. So the biggest thing that we were doing at that time frame is we were training Iraqi police and we were training an Iraqi army. Marines were hands-on training these guys, right? So in Ramadi, what we had done is we had built like a small makeshift barracks, created a small little base, and that's the police outpost. That was going to be the police training center. That was the police training center. So what we did was we stuffed this location up with 100 Iraqi police trainees and about 50 United States Marines. We had one entry point coming into it with the serpentine, which is like catty-cornered barricades so that when people drive through it, they have to drive slowly, right? Because one thing we learned from the bombing of Beirut in 1983 was you have to slow down vehicles because those vehicles might be what we call IED laden now, right? Bomb laden. As I told you, my unit had already gone in there early, but when units go out, it's all based off of rotation. That's how they do it logistically. So it's what we call RIP-TOA, RIP/TOA, right? RIP-TOA. That small unit right there that were training the Iraqi police, they were doing their RIP-TOA. So one unit was coming in and one unit was leaving. And as a matter of fact, the unit that was leaving, that was their last week. That was the last thing that they were doing. And on this very particular night, there were 2 Marines on post. There were 2 guard shacks. Both of them were manned by a squad automatic weapon, a saw. There was, I believe it was Lance Corporal Haerter and Corporal Yale. Lance Corporal Haerter was 19 years old. Corporal Yale was 22 years old. And it was like right around dusk, I believe. It was about 6:30 at night over there or something like that. A cement truck with about 2,500 pounds of dynamite, some kind of explosive in it, came barreling through that serpentine. And within a matter of 6 seconds, these 2 Marines started lighting up the front grill. No escalation of force whatsoever. They just reacted quickly. Boom, like right then and there, dumping rounds into the grill and into the windshield of this truck bomber, right? And it stopped the vehicle right there in the serpentine. But that individual behind the wheel ended up detonating the bomb. And big bomb, right? We all heard it. And so that's why we knew it was bad. I mean, this is miles away that we could hear this fucking explosion. Ending up killing those 2 young Marines. But the thing was, those 2 Marines, with their quick reaction, they end up saving the lives of everyone in that barracks behind them, because that amount of explosives would have destroyed that building, and it would have killed everybody in there, right? All 150 people. So I'm reading this, right? And here I am, like I said, I'm 23 years old. I'm like in the best shape of my life. I'm doing this job where I'm just unfulfilled. And I'm like, you are a fuck. Like, I literally had this moral inventory. I'm like, you are a fucking coward. Like, you are a coward, bro. Here you are. You call yourself a sergeant. You call yourself a man. Like, you should be on the front fucking lines. Right? I have no family. I have no kids. I have nothing. Like, there's no reason why you should not be out there. And I was disgusted with myself. I was like, this 19-year-old and this 22-year-old kid just fucking died. And here you are, sitting safely behind this fucking this barricade, doing your little cushy-ass little desk job. Like, what are you? What are you? And I was just like, fuck. I'm here in Iraq. I'm here in Iraq right now, and I should be on the fucking front lines. Like, granted, barely trained, but I was like, I should be on the fucking front lines. I should be doing something. I'm trained for it. I was like, you need to do something right fucking now, right? And I flashed back instantaneously to a conversation I had with a friend back at forecasting school, and he was telling me about this MOS where you can find out where you run sources, right? He's like, dude, it's James Bond. It's fucking crazy. I met a few of these dudes. They're fucking crazy, bro. Like, you get to grow your beard. You change your name. You do all this other stuff. But the crazy part is, like, you get to go and do all the best missions in the fucking Marine Corps and all this other stuff. And that's Marine Corps counterintelligence. And I remember sitting there in that moment. I'm like, fuck, no way. Because I was sitting there and I was thinking, like, how could I solve this problem, right? Like, what could have saved those Marines' lives? Well, what could have saved those Marines' lives was finding out information about that fucking bomber before it even happened. I was like, that's what I need to do. I was like, that's the job I need to be doing. So I quickly hop on the internet at that moment. I'm like, I just typed in Marine Corps counterintelligence. And like, if you type it in right now, like 0211 Marine Corps counterintelligence, it's going to pull up all the criteria that you need to have in order to do that. And I'm like, I pretty much got all that. I should do this. And right then and there in Iraq, I call back to Camp Pendleton, California, to 1st Intelligence Battalion. And I call up, no kidding, the counterintelligence unit at Camp Pendleton. And I'm sitting there and I'm fucking like, I'm breathing hard and heavy. I'm like, hey. And they're like, what's up, man? I'm like, hey, listen, I'm in fucking Iraq right now. I need to become one of you guys. And the guy laughs. He's on the phone. He's like, ha. He's like, dude, do you know how hard it is to become one of us? Like, not trying to discourage me whatsoever, but it's like he was just kind of letting me know, like, this is no easy fucking pie, right? I was like, no, but I don't care. Like, I will do whatever it fucking takes to become one of you guys. He's like, all right, hey, listen, like, let me explain something to you, right? First and foremost, you got to meet all this criteria. And he goes through all the criteria that I had already read, right? You got to be able to write like 40 or 60 words per minute. You got to have this the aptitude to be able to speak a foreign language. You have to have a certain GT score on your ASVAB. You need to have XYZ, right? You need to have first class PFT, all this other crazy crap, right? And I was like, yeah, I got that. What next? He's like, it's not just that, dude. Like, what I'm going to have to do right now is I'm going to have to send you an entire recruiting packet, and you're going to have to fill out all this information. And within that packet, you're going to have to read these. You're going to have to read these manuscripts, and you're going to have to actually, no kidding, handwrite your analysis on all of these things. And then you're going to have to do this test and this test and this test, and then you're going to have to go and you're going to have to get released by your monitor. And I was like, oh shit. He's like, you're going to have to get released by your monitor out of your MOS, and then you're going to have to be able to get transferred over here. But you can only have that happen once. You go through all this stuff. We make sure you pass all these tests, and then at the end of it, you have to sit on a board. You actually have to be handpicked and selected on this board of 4 counterintelligence Marines who have already been through all our schooling, all of our training, have already gone through all these processes, and deem you fit enough to be one of us. He's like, oh, mind you, I got to let you know this too. Our schoolhouse is no joke. He said, our schoolhouse has the second highest attrition rate out of any other school in the DOD. He's like, you want to know what the first school is that has the highest attrition rate? It's BUDS, Navy SEALs, right? Our school is the second highest dropout rate. He's like, this is the type of fucking world you're about to wander into. Are you sure you want to do this? And here I am sitting here in Iraq, fresh off of this stuff, hearing the fucking helicopter come in, dropping off the bodies of these 2 young Marines. And I was like, there is nothing in this fucking world right now that will stop me from doing this shit. There's nothing. In order for me to fucking feel complete, in order for me to fucking live with myself, I need to at least try this. I need to be there. This is what my fucking soul desires. This is what I need to do. I need to go. I need to be on the front lines. So, long story short, here I am in Iraq, still doing my job full time. And on the side, here I am doing these reports. I busted it all out. I busted everything out within 3 months. Just dedicated to getting it all done. Send it all back. I'm like, what else? What else do you need? What else do you need? I was a fly on their fucking stinky asshole for 3-4 months, right? These guys I couldn't get enough of it. I was like, come on, what's next? So within 4 months, here I am, a process that they were telling me was going to take like 6 to 8 months. Here I am 3 months in. I'm like, get me on the board now. Get me on the board now. Like, come on, let's go. They're like, well, it's not that easy. I'm like, well, what's up? Like, we got to fly these people out to fucking Iraq. I was like, oh, shit. So these motherfuckers fly in on a goddamn helicopter, right? These fucking dudes not wearing name tags, no rank, long, scraggly-ass hair, right? Like, these fucking spooks, bro. They show up to my fucking location. They're like, you need to give us a conference room right now. I was like, all right, got it. Clear, right? So I go upstairs. I clear out this fucking colonel's office. He's asleep. I don't give a shit. I'm like, this is mine. I don't give a fuck. Clear out this colonel's office, right? And these guys set up, right? And the crazy thing is there was another dude that was actually there. There's another dude there that was getting ready to get boarded too. And they look at me and they say, you're going second. I was like, fuck. So I go second. And I remember the other individual. I won't say his name just in case he's still in and operating. But he comes down the stairs. He's like, man, I don't fucking know. I was like, damn, all right. So I go upstairs. They call me up there. And literally for like 3, 4, 5 hours, man, they just fucking grill me. Just grill. 4 dudes just sitting there, and they're going through the craziest. They're asking me the craziest questions in the world. The most, like, they're asking me mainly about my ethics, right? Like, who's my loyalty to? Who's my allegiance to? What's my moral fiber? What's my character? What are my virtues? If I'm in this situation and this is going on, what do I say? What do I do? Who do I report to? All this other stuff. And then they broke me down again shotgun style. They found out, like, my greatest fears. My greatest fear is, like, singing in front of people. I fucking... No, like, I'm not, right? I don't, you guys can tell from this fucking voice, I am not a singer. So they're like, all right, what you're going to do right now is you're going to get up and you're going to put on a performance right now. We want fucking full vocals and air guitar. And if you do not have us fucking enamored by your performance, this is a no. So I got up. They're like, think of a song right now because you're going. And I was like, fuck, like, what do I sing? What do I do? You know what I mean? I'm like scared out of my mind. And I was like, this is make or break. Make or fucking break right now. I just got to go. So I get up, man, and I just start fucking singing Welcome to the Jungle, fucking air guitar, head banging, all this other stuff. One dude literally fucking falls out of his chair laughing so hard. I'm like 2 or 3 minutes into this shit. And they're like, all right, enough. Like, enough. Go sit down. I was like, shit. And they literally, like, look at each other, and then they look at me and they go, what are we going to do with this guy, guys? And I was like, fuck. And they look at me and they go, welcome aboard, man. You're one of us. And in that moment, dude, I'm telling you, I don't have a lot of days that I can remember, like, a specific feeling of feeling like joy or like accomplishment, but like that day was one of the fucking proudest days of my life. Like, the second they said that to me, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't fucking believe it, dude. Like, I couldn't believe that all of this led up to that. Like, every fucking instance up to that was like a culminating point that led to that moment, right? And I was just like in shock. Now, you guys might be sitting there like applauding, being like, dude, that's fucking epic. But you guys got to remember this one thing. I still had to fight my monitor, right? I still had to get out of my MOS. Like, I was a slave to that fucking weather MOS. And wouldn't you know, the fucking divine spirits of Saddam Hussein, literally like a week later, right? So I get the acceptance letter, and I get the acceptance letter from counterintelligence, which is like, it was like a 99% chance, like, that I wasn't going to make it. I fucking made it, right? And I was like, fuck, I need to get out of weather. I need, like, something has to happen. So wouldn't you know, this is like, the crazy part during this thing is, during that time frame, the Marine Corps was plussing up, right? It was building in size. So we were going from 192,000 to like 208,000, right? So the Marine Corps is growing. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to get people that were willing to re-enlist. They were trying to give them incentives. So these monitors, right? I told you about all these monitors earlier. What they did during that time frame was they were going to all the major bases in Iraq in order to get people to re-enlist, because when you re-enlist overseas, and if you get a bonus, it's tax-free. So they did what's known as a monitor roadshow. They set up right over in our little internet cafe in Altacadam. And all these monitors, all these master sergeants and master gunnery sergeants show up. And I'm sitting here with my counterintelligence acceptance letter. literally a week and a half later, and I have to go talk to this fucking monitor, right? Luckily, it wasn't the same guy that fucked me over as a Lance Corporal, right? So I walk in, and they're like, hey, who are you here to see? And I'm like, I got to talk to the 6842 monitor. And they're like, all right, he's over here. So I walk up, and there's this bald-headed dude sitting behind his computer. He's a master sergeant. He's actually in pretty good shape, like probably like 6'3", 6'4", like lean, athletic build. Bald-headed dude. And here I am, this kind of like ragtag sergeant with kind of like same kind of haircut I have right now, maybe a little bit lower. This is actually pretty high. Like, if you guys saw me in the Marine Corps, I was always against this, but I did always have kind of like a slick back, kind of suave kind of thing going on, right? And I walk up to the monitor, and the monitor's like, what you got for me, Sergeant? And I was like, I got the keys to the castle. He's like, oh, yeah. And I was like, I kind of placed the paper down, my acceptance to counterintel. He's like, you got accepted to counterintelligence? I was like, yes, sir, I did. He's like, oh, so you need to be released from this MOS. And I was like, exactly. And he's like, tell me one reason why I should let you out of this MOS. And I was like, fuck, moment of truth right here, right? Like, and probably in the realest moment of my life. Here, at the time, he's sitting in front of this monitor typing and pulling up all my record and stuff. And I just looked at him, and I fucking tapped on the computer. And I said, I don't want to sit behind one of these anymore, man. Like, I got too much in me. I need to be out there. It's like, I can't be doing this for the rest of my career. And he looks at me, he goes, huh. He says, at one point, you're going to be behind one of these things, right? And that's going to be the majority of your job. And I said, Master Sergeant, I said, that day will come, I'm sure, but it's not now. And he looks at me, goes, huh, good enough for me. And he fucking signs the paper, and he says, you're released. Congratulations. And I was just like, motherfucker. Like, I fucking started jumping up and down. I was like about to hug this dude. And that's like not, like, you don't do that shit, right? And I was just like, fuck yeah, right? Like, screaming because I'm like fucking ready to rock and roll, dude. So I got this fucking letter. Like, literally, this is like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, golden fucking ticket, right? And I'm sitting here like, holy fuck. Like, I got this one paper with this dude's signature. I am holding on to it with like dear life. Like, as I'm walking around from this space back to my next space. Because I'm going and making like, I literally walked back there, like didn't even let it out of my eyes, wouldn't even let it out, whatever. And I made fucking like 16 copies of that fucking paper, dude, right? To make sure that I needed to send it all over the place, but I needed to make sure, right, that ticket was not fucking there. So anyway, long story short, I got released from the MOS, sent out everything that I needed to, ended up getting orders right then and there that once I completed my tour in Iraq, that I was to report to Camp Pendleton, California in December of 2000, at the end of 2008, and report to 1st Intelligence Battalion. And from there, gents, that was my first fucking war story, and we're gonna get into this as I build further and further, because once I started as a Marine Corps intelligence operative, I ended up getting into the shit. I ended up going on the front lines in Afghanistan, and it happened really quickly. So, with that said, that's an hour of my life right there. A couple years of some of the fucking greatest victories, some of the greatest downfalls up to that point too. Some of the biggest lows, but some of the biggest highs. Fucking insane, just insane life that I've lived up to this point, guys. I'm 34 years old. I'm gonna tell you a lot more, but man, I mean, fuck. This was an awesome trip down memory lane. And I appreciate you guys being here for me on this. So, again, if you guys like what you hear, please do. I mean, seriously, throw some likes out there. I threw up a video yesterday as well, kind of highlighting the fact that I'm not necessarily having financial trouble right now, but I'm having some. I'm at a sticking point right now when it comes to like my lease and all this other stuff and trying to figure things out. So if you guys feel in your hearts, I got a link below for donating to a PayPal. A couple bucks here or there would be phenomenal, especially since I'm bearing it all for you. But if you don't have any money, please do. I mean, at least give something back, and I'd love to see that in the form of recognition through a like, through a share, a subscribe. Tell your friends about what I'm doing here too, if you don't mind. With that said, that's fucking War Stories with Papa C. I'll see you guys back here on Sunday for that. But before then, it'll be John and I again on Saturday morning with another Red Pill Smash Bros. Anyway, with that said, peace out. See ya.